kind of guy that's in the blind alley. He's in the cul-de-sac, and he's told too many times because he didn't know alternative medicine. He had to go search it out on his own because he's ornery. Like me, that's why we get along. And Brandy, when you say, you can't do that, it's like you turn around, you got this shirt, we're going to all have shirts that say, hey, watch me, because you're not done. Anyway, John, thank you. You're welcome.
I've met some of you before at the last meeting, and I was driving over here, and I got to thinking, who am I talking to today? I'm still a patient of Dr. Joyner, by the way, but for the most part, I've recovered from melanoma, which was rushing through my system. And I'll tell a story in a minute. So, like I said, I'm a patient of Dr. Joyner's, and some people call me a victim of cancer, and I don't like that word because it's a defeatist word. So, even from the beginning, I didn't consider myself a victim. I felt like a victim, but I never, no way ever defined myself as a victim. Because I wanted to have power over this little beast called cancer. Dr. Joyner taught me to call it the enemy, which it really is. But the other enemy is how our mind runs. Because our mind affects our emotions. And I'm a family therapist, and I deal in the area of emotions and relationships with people, family members, and so on. Let's see. So I deal with a lot of people's feelings, including my own. We're human too. Therapists, doctors, engineers, we're all human. So I've dealt with, through this whole experience, I want a few feelings by a quick light. Anger, upset, confusion. This is when I was told I had cancer. I was surprised that I had been sick since I've been healthy most of my life. And the feeling of sadness and the feeling that I was all alone in this. Okay? So here's what happened. I got diagnosed a couple years ago with skin cancer. And then the dermatologist referred me to an oncologist here in town. And he told me, you're going to have to go into surgery so we can determine how serious this is, because it looks like the skin cancer went into melanoma into your lymph system. So they identified it through a PET scan. They discovered that under my arm I had, I think after the surgery, well, during the surgery they took these scans, and they discovered that I had 26 tumors, and 10 of those had metastasized already. Now, what I do remember discussing with the doctor, and I remember my mother saying it over the years, is that melanoma is one of those cancers that spreads throughout the lymph system very rapidly. So the doctor asked me to give him permission to take out the whole mass. So if you look under my arm, this whole mass is gone. He cut through nerves and blood and did the surgery. And then I'm laying there, asleep still, recovering, and my relatives are in a conference room. You know, the doctors go to the conference room with the relatives at the hospital, and he's telling them, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. John's not, we don't know how he's going to do. So he basically said, there's nothing we can do for him now. We did the cutting, okay? So then I met with him in his office later on, and I asked the doctor, he's in his 50s. I said, he's an experienced doctor, cuts on a lot of people. And I said, what about nutrition, doc? Can you refer me to somebody? Because I've read a lot about herbs and antioxidants that they can help people overcome their cancer. I don't do that. I just do cutting, he said. What? And he was kind of arrogant about it. That's my definition. Maybe he didn't feel arrogant, but he looked arrogant to me. So anyway, I left the office, and within 2 days, I had known an old man a long time ago who extended his life by 5 or 7 years by taking herbs and antioxidants and different stuff for his heart problem and his cancer, his lung cancer, because he was a chronic smoker. So I immediately went over here to the natural food store, what's it called, Sunrise Natural Food. And I asked for the best person who knew about these type of foods. They referred me to Alden Oki. Alden knew Dr. Joyner. Alden told me his story, how he recovered from a chronic illness through nutrition, which I was really impressed with. And then he referred me to Dr. Joyner. The same day, I went over to Dr. Joyner, and I talked to him. Because I come from a school that you can't, when you're dying, you can't sit around waiting for a longitudinal study by the experts at Harvard University or something. You have to take action now so you don't die. So I went to Joyner, and he told me his story about all these illnesses he had. Unbelievable. He told me about some of them today. I could not believe anybody could go through that in their life. And I said to myself, and he shared with me about the different remedies he uses, a few, and he told me, you got to get your energy up, man. You're almost, he didn't say to me you're almost dead, but he looked at me like I was almost dead. And then a few months later, he told me, you were almost dead when you came around. So he had a blood analysis done on, a blood draw done on me, and then he analyzed, or looked at my blood, and he said, here's what's needed correcting. So then he put me on amino acids right in the beginning to get my energy up, because I had no energy to fight enemies inside me. And that was just the beginning. And then later on, he added more supplements. And then I read more and more about cancer and the importance of having antioxidants in my system, the importance of making my system more alkaline and not so acidic, because I was extremely acidic, which was really a dangerous country. I read in several journals, you're subjecting yourself to like 75 different diseases in America if you stay too acidic for too long. And Brandy covered some of that already. Okay, so the other emotions I went through is, number one, I feared the deadly attack of the cancer, but I also felt gratitude for the mechanics of the doctor oncologist who did the surgery. He got me off to a good head start. He took out this big mass, and he and I both knew it could still spread, because melanoma don't sit still. The other feeling I had, that feeling of abandonment and neglect by a professional who was supposed to have some answers, or at least refer you to somebody who had some answers. He left me high and dry, never called me for months afterwards, he didn't know if I was dead or alive. He had said to me something to the effect that you could die soon, maybe in 3 months, maybe in 6 months, and then basically close the door on me. So, I have strong feelings about that. And then I read a lot of stuff about the medical profession, and I learned a big word, allopathic. How many of you ever heard allopathic medicine? See, I learned it by getting cancer. You know what allopathic means? It comes from a Greek word meaning to suffer. Ain't that interesting? They not only don't help people not suffer, if you take chemo or radiation from them, they're going to lower your immune system, and you're going to suffer. All of you have heard the war stories, right? About what happens to people with chemotherapy, particularly the women, breast cancer, and all the stories we've heard. How they lay in bed for weeks and months, get every single imaginable horrible feeling, weakness, they lose their hair, they vomit, they have all these horrible symptoms, and it goes on and on. Now, I'm going to share something with you that most of you don't know. My relatives didn't know it either. In fact, they think I'm full of shit because I told them the truth. The Natural Cancer Institute, online, on the computer, has a statistic that I will never forget the rest of my life. And I share it with everybody I meet now. Of those who had chemotherapy or radiation, by the end of 95% of them, by the end of the 5th year, will die. They'll either die the first, second, or third year, but by the 5th year. So that's the marker the medical profession uses to make their wonderful predictions about whether you're going to die in 3 months or 3 years or whatever. But what they don't tell you before they do the chemotherapy or the radiation is, number one, they don't go into great detail about the side effects, because they might scare you. And number two, they don't tell you the statistic, which the NCI has online. Ask most Americans about this, and they think that there's still hope for cancer people using the conventional method called allopathic medicine. There's little hope, folks. There's more hope. And I chose Dr. Joyner because he's in the naturopathic business. With foods, good foods, healthy foods that improve and build up the immune system. So, It isn't just cancer that's the enemy. The enemy is we've got to use our mind correctly and go for what works. That's why I chose Alden's way and Dr. Joyner's way. I want to do what works. When I found Dr. Joyner, I was in fear before that, and I just was in exhilaration, tremendous sense of relief. Whatever depression I had, you're going, and I was not depressed. Period. Because I knew we were on the right track. Then the 4th month after I saw him, he referred me to get detoxed, to flush out my colon and intestine, to get rid of all the junk that accumulated in there for years. Because if you've got plaque built up on those cell walls, the food can't get through. You can't assimilate all the good vitamins and minerals and whatever else you're taking in. So I followed up on that one. And let's see. Oh, the other fear I had going through this whole process was I wasn't working. I was used to having a good income and very little money to operate with. Bare survival. My wife was having a hard time getting a job. So that, one of my biggest worries in life is not having enough income. I like money. Okay? So that was the other thing that I had to work through. Now, what about family relationships? My family members are adorers of the medical profession. They think doctors were born in heaven and are still born in heaven on the planet, and that they're errorless. So they don't like me because I look at that. I look at this whole thing differently. I see doctors as limited. They're limiting their opportunities to look at other alternatives for all of us, particularly when it comes to cancer. I have ambivalent feelings towards the medical profession. On the one hand, they help save my life. On the other hand, they're on the wrong track when it comes to cancer, in my opinion, in most cases. There's some exceptions, which I won't name right now, but there's a few. Okay, so, my relatives. My relatives are so, they won't listen to me. They think I'm a nut. They think nutritionists and alternatives are quacks. And I told them, no, I think the doctors are quacks, and we got into this big argument. So what I have to do is I have to avoid most of my relatives because there's too much friction. It's too stressful. I don't need stress. I needed to learn to reduce my stresses in life, which I have done. My best supporter through all this was my wife. Why? Because she was non-judgmental. She had some reserved feelings about what I was doing through Dr. Joyner in the beginning. But little by little, she began to realize, hey, John's still alive. It must be working. Okay.
She didn't cash in the life insurance.
There was no life insurance. I was broke.
Oh, I'd be supportive too.
So anyway, I learned, I'm going to list a whole bunch of things real quick like and then end. I learned during this whole process to exercise regularly, which I usually did anyway. I go over to the pool and swim. Drink alkaline water. That was one of my biggies. And I frequently do a litmus test to see whether I'm acid or alkaline. And stay out of the sun between the hours of 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Because light-skinned people, if we stay in the sun, it's like feeding the garden with acidity. And cancers love to feed, that's the big lesson I went through this whole thing. Cancers love to feed off acidity. Cancers can't live in an alkaline environment. But why the hell are the doctors and nurses in the medical profession not teaching people this? You know why? It's all about money and greed. Okay? So looking back in time now, what I really was missing, and I was overusing Dr. Joyner, is I needed a support group where I could go and share my feelings and my thoughts and listen to other people's feelings and thoughts to lessen the stressful feelings. And so we're in the process of an organization. I'm part of the team here. I'm going to be participating in leading people and showing people how to lead others in a support group. All okay? So I lived through a life-threatening illness and I survived. And I'm more knowledgeable. I know now what it takes to work through the process, and I'm willing to share that with others. So I'm going to go back to school and take a course called NC, Nutritional Consultant, because I want to be able to reach out to people with correct information, not just the psychological stuff, but some of the physical stuff too. So anybody you know who has a life-threatening illness of any kind, feel free to have them call me. We'll be glad to talk to them day or night, just like Dr. Joyner will a lot of times talk to people day or night.